Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Reflection by Abia. My name is Abia Grant, and welcome to this week's episode. This is episode number 3 of the podcast. So we are already 3 down. It is going pretty well. So, guys, this week has been an interesting week. This week has been a week that I am like, yeah, there's a lot that I still need to work on personal wise and my emotions and everything in regards to that. This podcast, what I wanted to speak about is basically how to manage your anxiety, but at the same time be self-aware. And I put those two together because I feel like they are contradicting each other, but I do feel like that there is a place, there is a opportunity to be or in the feeling of having anxiety, but also be self-aware at the same time. Let me speak about myself just in general. I feel like my emotions are at a high. I feel that it's I'm self-aware that something is wrong, that this feeling doesn't feel good. Sometimes I'll know how I got there, and sometimes I'll know how I didn't get there. Meaning that I've allowed for the different things that may be going on in my life to impact and build up. And with me not handling it, it just grows until eventually it blows up. So I wanted to basically just give you what this week was like and these talks and this podcast is going to be a lot about just my own experiences, as I explained before, and just kind of how I'm trying to better navigate, not kind of, but how I'm working to better navigate, my life and making sure that I try to be the best version of myself. So, this week I, work a 9 to 5 and my weeks are very busy. I am up at 5 a.m. in the morning. I'm working out 5 a.m. I'm out of the house. Well, actually, I'm up by like 4:50. I'm out of the house before 7 o'clock to head to work. I gotta be to work for 9 o'clock. And then I'm there from 9 to 5. Then I come home. I deal with whatever that needs to, get done, whatever errands. And normally on my commute home, I'm editing for my YouTube channel. I'm on a constant go. And I guess some people may say, well, you're doing too much. But I at the same time feel like I have to put this effort in order to, God willing, reap, the blessings that I see for myself. And I'm willing to put in the work. But at the same time, it is very challenging. Now, and we're adding the podcast to that, challenging lifestyle. And this week I was just overwhelmed. In addition to that, there was things that was going on at the job, and I was just feeling like, one, job wise, it's only a certain amount of hours in a day. So therefore, how am I going to get X, Y, and Z done in these amount of hours and these many tasks? And we're gonna talk about that, the job atmosphere and what you are able to do and what is just going to have to wait. and how to properly make those decisions because I've dealt with that in this new position that I have, those challenges. But what I would say is that in I was just feeling overwhelmed. And then my coworkers was going to be out on Friday. She wanted coming in on Friday, but she's going to be out this Monday. And, with me being new into this role, I just want to make sure that I'm doing what I need to do properly, what I've thus far been trained to do. And I already went into this expectation of, or this thought process of, I wasn't going to do my best. I was already, by Wednesday, after learning that she wasn't going to be in, I was already in a space of, I'm not going to be able to fill in her shoes for the day that she's out. Now, remind you, she's been out before. She was out almost 3, 4 weeks when I first initially had started my position. Literally, I think she was out maybe a month after I started. And I had to do her responsibilities for those weeks that she was out. And I was already leading with a negative. I was already leading with, oh my gosh, this is going to be the problem. And I was already at the deep end. And was just like, wow, it affected my lack of sleep, or I didn't have any sleep. It affected my just thoughts, and it was very impactful. And I was just like, okay, now that's one thing. So, as you guys know, I'm starting the podcast. I have this podcast, and I was using a particular host to host my podcast. I decided that I wanted to switch over to another host. With that, I had to then take, my information and have it updated onto other podcast sites. And I was just like, how am I going to do that plus all the stuff that I have to do at work? I just was overwhelming. I had this sense of overwhelming feeling and this sense of just doom. And I said to myself, why are you feeling this way? You know, and literally the night or that evening, or I sat down with myself. I was up so late that I was up with my husband. When he had came home, I had a whole conversation with him for like 15, 20 minutes. And when I went to bed, I said to myself, or back to bed, I had said to myself, okay, you need to get rest, and you can't allow for all the other things that's going around you to interfere with you making sure that you have enough rest because you are doing a lot. And right now, you need to put this to bed because you're not in a clear mindset. You're not in trying to not, I want to say fix, but at the same time, I want to say see. That self-awareness part. You're not in the self-awareness stage. You're in the noise. That's what I call it. Anxiety to me feels like noise. As you understand what anxiety is, as you understand how you are feeling, you're able to better navigate when you are going through those experiences and those emotions and those feelings, you know. So the following day, I had listened to a fellow podcaster, and she was just basically speaking about boundaries, and she was speaking about. I listened to another podcast, and they were speaking about don't go into a situation of automatically thinking the outcome is going to be negative. Go into it with, you got this. You know what I mean? And you're your own cheerleader, I guess you can say. So I took from both of those words because I felt like they were speaking to me. Maybe it wasn't speaking directly to me and then say a Bia, Grant, here you go. But it spoke to me in regards into, after listening to that podcast, I went back into the office that day, because I listened to the podcast. I had woke up, went to work, still stressed out, still had anxiety. That afternoon, that's when I had listened to the podcast that following day and received those messages. And then I had felt this sense of just like, and I don't mean to cuss, and I'm gonna try not to, but F it, F it, you know. The stuff that I had to do for my podcast, I wrote everything down that I needed, the different places that I wanted my podcast to be heard. I had wrote the name of those locations or those names down. And then I was like, okay, once I do each one, I'll check each one off the list. So literally about time, then I want to say that evening into that morning, I already had everything done. But remind you, I was like, how am I going to do this? This is so overwhelming. I just really put myself into I don't know, it was just like a really bad place. I just put myself into a really, like, you don't know anything place. And I'm just trying to figure out, girl, why are you doing that to yourself? Why are you already speaking negative? And the crazy thing is, I was having a conversation with my mom today, and I was speaking with her in regards into how I was feeling because yesterday I also woke up and I was just feeling really like just not good, and I'm gonna throw it out there, just being women and having our hormones and our body goes through changes every month. I don't need to spell it out for you guys or anything like that. We also have to take into consideration that sometimes our thoughts are not as clear as it should be because we are going through changes during that period of time. So I do feel like that plays an important factor as well too. But I also think that we have the ability to manage it. We have the ability to be in a sense of anxiety state, but also be self-aware at the same time. And I feel like that's what I did. I was dealing with this emotional feelings of overwhelmness, this emotional feeling of noise. And I relied on my what I've been taught through therapy and what I've researched myself in order to say, okay, Abia, you are self-aware. Even though you're feeling whatever you're feeling, you are aware that this feeling is not real, and you are aware that you got this, and I don't mean to repeat myself, but I feel like we, again, as I had mentioned before, we got to be our own cheerleader. We have to, yeah, there's going to be people in our lives that is going to be supportive, I guess you can say, but we have to be able to push ourselves. We have to be able to know that we're going to put our best foot forward and we can't allow for our emotions to derail us. We can't allow because, oh, we made a mistake before that we're gonna make that same mistake again. We can't allow that to win, because the thing is like we as humans, we have the ability to grow. If you are speaking negative, 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 negative to yourself, then you're hampering yourself. And I feel like we get enough of that just in the outside world. So why should we be doing that to ourselves? you know? Um, so I really wanted to touch base on that. I really wanted to speak about just my my thoughts on how to counteract that anxiety. And it's a part of self-improvement in regards into I feel like you improve what you know is a issue. At the same time, you're always dealing with that issue. Meaning, let me correct that or add to that. Anxiety is not something that is going to go away. It's something that you manage, it's something that you are constantly trying to not fall into. I guess not constantly, but a place that you're not trying to fall into, and you have to be able to know, okay, this is what it is, and this is what I'm going to do to correct it. Um, Now, ignoring it, it's just not going to work. You gotta be able to face it, or it's just going to consume you, as I have mentioned in last week podcast. And the crazy thing, to just talk a little bit about my YouTube space in regards to, I had posted a series about my anxiety and the emotional state that I was feeling. And someone had wrote, and it's people troll. It is what it is, and pretty much I was explaining how I have anxiety and my feelings at that particular moment. I think it was like the first video that I had put on my YouTube channel about my anxiety, and the person had wrote back, "Just get sleep, take medication," and it was like a third part. I can't remember what the third part was. And I just want to say, like, when dealing with anxiety, a lot of times you don't sleep. Clearly, I don't when I had those episodes. And I was on medication. And unfortunately, it didn't do much for me. Personally, I really didn't feel much of a difference. A lot of people like to say, well, this is what you should do. I guess I'm one of those people saying now this is what you should do, but I'm trying to get the best advice for the simple fact that I've been there, done that, and there. I understand what those feelings are. Maybe not to your extent. Maybe mine's is more than yours. Who knows? But I understand that place. I understand that nervousness. I understand that constant on a hamster wheel, and you feel like you're just spinning over and over and over and over and over again. I get that part of it, you know. And I just want to say that a lot of people like to tell you to do this and get sleep, take medication, like this person has said. And what I try to explain to that person is that those things do not solve the issue. The fact of the matter is that you have to be able to work through them. That's the only way to get to the other side. So guys, yeah, that is this podcast. I would just have to say that we can be anxious and be self-aware at the same time. It's possible. Use the tools in regards into writing things down. Use the tools in regards into taking a walk. Using tools in regards into talking to somebody who is a good listener, who is going to be a support system. Doesn't mean you overwhelm them. You just, come to them when it gets too much. And then if push come to shove, you go to therapy. Um, like I said, is that you have a choice, and we have a choice to be not not fix the pattern or fix the issue, and we can hide, or we can, be self-aware, knowing that we this is our emotional state sometimes, and we got to check ourselves. So, guys, let's go ahead and read this week's quote. This quote is pretty much like a kind of like a two-part quote. I want to say. So, the first quote is, "You can't live a positive life with a negative mind." And the second quote is, "There's a difference between getting over things and getting through them." So, I'm going to go ahead and combine this quote because I feel like this quote should be one. And I'm going to say it like this: there's a difference between getting over things and getting through them. And you can't live a positive life with a negative mind. So, as I mentioned before, you can expect blessings on the other end if you over there just in this negative space. You just can't. You can't want to get to the other side. It's just not going to work. So, guys, that's the end of this week's podcast. And God willing, I will see you guys next week. Make sure that you stay blessed and make sure you treat each other kindly out there in those streets. And I will see you next week. All right, guys. Bye.